Hello and welcome to The Lobby, GameSpot's weekly chat show, right here on GameSpot.com at 2 p.m. Pacific time. You can change that to wherever you live. Maybe you live in Europe. Maybe you live on the east side of America. Maybe you live on the moon. We don't broadcast to the moon. I'm your host, Daniel Dwyer, joined by Chris Waters.
Hey!
How you doing, my friend?
People don't live on the moon, Danny.
They don't? Does no one live on the moon yet?
No.
It's 2015. Marty McFly has just returned from the future, and nobody lives on the moon yet.
That's the harsh, cold reality we have to live with every day.
That's a shame. What do you think about that, Alexa Ray Korea?
I mean, the moon is kind of a scary place. I don't know why anyone would want to live on there.
Taxes. There's no taxes on the moon.
Yeah,
it's tax season right now.
It's a tax
You know who
season.
doesn't give a shit about that? Moon folk. Peter Brown. What do you think about life on the moon?
What? I don't know. It's made of cheese, right? That's the deal?
You wore your moon shirt especially for
Moon
this.
shirt?
Look at that.
Is that the moon?
That's a great moon shirt.
I'm pretty
Isn't
sure
that
it's
the bottom of the
California.
ocean?
That's the what do you call? What's the one landmass on the moon that people know about? The Sea of Tranquility.
Yeah,
There it is.
that's
That's
exactly
the
what.
Sea of Tranquility.
Sure.
Doesn't look
Great.
very tranquil.
Yeah.
This week's episode of Lobby brought to you by the moon. Check out the moon.
Moon.com.
Moon.com. Don't go to moon.com. Who knows what that is? Don't go to
So we
moon.com.
should just recommend random websites. It's dangerous.
I dig it.
Butts420.com. Check it out. Google safe search off.
Brought to you by Moon, the
I was-
first-person shooter for the Nintendo DS.
We did that weird thing at PAX, PAX South, the top 10 dogs in games,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was looking for B-roll for all the different dogs, and I typed dog meat into Google Images, and I had
No.
safe search off, and boy, have I had nightmares ever since.
You didn't just get real hungry, right?
No.
Ooh, what?
Understand. What?
All right.
People
All right.
eat it.
People eat meat.
All right, that's enough of that.
All kinds of meat.
Anyway, we're here to talk about Zelda because, Alexa, your review for Zelda Majora's Mask is going live on the site tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time.
Right. And when's it out? Like a week
That
from
comes
now?
out February 13th alongside the new Nintendo 3DS.
Excellent. Are you guessing you're embargoed to actually talk about that particular video game?
I can't really say much about
Hmm.
it except that it is a Zelda game and you can play
Confirmed.
it in 3D and it's Majora's Mask.
You can
Great.
talk about Majora's Mask, though, right?
Majora's Mask, I can't talk about Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask, for people that don't remember, is the weird Zelda game where
Yes.
the moon, speaking of the moon,
Good old moon.
Tying it all back up. Except we cut the moon part out of this, probably, so it doesn't make any sense.
It's just a
moon.
mystery.
Yeah.
the moon is falling out of the sky and Link has to save the world again and he has to relive this 72-hour span, like Groundhog Day, over and over and over and over, saving people, getting things right, liberating spirits from temples, typical Link stuff. And
Wasn't it Groundhog
it's
Day
pretty weird.
like on Monday? They really
Yesterday.
Yesterday was Groundhog
yeah,
Day.
they should have like maybe done a like thematic launch thing there. Just missed
Oh,
out
that
on
would
that
have been
one.
awesome.
Yeah,
Nintendo.
they should have done a takeover of the moon and made it have a real angry face. I feel like the moon isn't so much falling out of the sky as like face planting out of the sky, like with real intent.
I grew up playing Commodore stuff, so I was kind of my like big guilt in terms of games is not really getting like deep into Nintendo stuff, at least for a long time, until the GameCube. So the first Zelda I played was Wind Waker. So I'm I know. So I'm kind of interested in what you guys think is like your favorite Zelda game, and then maybe let's talk about what you think maybe like objectively what like the best Zelda
Don't even
experience
throw that
is.
word around.
Don't throw that.
Shouldn't
Don't do
even
that.
try. Peter, what's your favorite Zelda game? Because I know you've played all of them.
Almost all of them. I skipped some of the handheld ones, like the Oracle of Ages. And
Right.
Anyway,
Minish Cap.
yeah, I mean, like growing up though, my brother was much older. He owned a Nintendo. I couldn't help but be sort of thrust into Zelda, like the original, The Legend of Zelda, and that I think is for me, perhaps like my personal favorite game. It's a real close call between that and A Link to the Past. Both of those games are sort of, they fall within the classic Zelda formula before the series went to 3D, but they each have their own qualities that are really great. The original one, it was such like you didn't really have much context for what was going on. It was very mysterious, and you had this kind of an open world to explore and tackle it in your own way. And that was such like a interesting thing, especially back then. Like just that sort of that quiet like subtlety of like, you know, who knows what's happening.
This wide open adventure place. It
Yeah.
wasn't like segmented into levels.
Right.
I mean, there were dungeons, but you could just go all over the place.
Yeah.
And that kind of freedom was incredible. I mean, people would like make maps. You would draw a map
Exactly.
to keep track of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of that mystery worked against it in some ways, because I remember being over a friend's house and they just like navigate like 4 screens over, 3 screens up, and then there's this bush that's like the 5th from the center on the, and then like that's like a crucial part to getting through the game.
Sure.
How are you ever going to find that if you don't have someone to tell you? Like that just like for me is so aggravating.
Is it a game you think you can go back, like I could play for the first time in 2015 and enjoy it, or do you enjoy it because of its time and place in like your own gaming history?
I think you could go back and enjoy it, but as Chris was saying, it can be a bit cryptic, right? Like there are moments, like even just the little messages that you read from people, they're likely to confuse you more than they are to give you any sort of useful knowledge. But that said, I think it stands the test of time as like a great overhead 2D adventure game.
Alexa, what's your favorite Zelda game of all the ones you played?
You said you started with Wind Waker.
Yes.
That was your first?
Yeah.
I love Wind Waker. Wind Waker, I think, is my favorite Zelda game. There's something about being able to explore this enormous, vast world, and having all of that water made it feel much bigger than it probably already was. And riding around in this like sassy boat and just like figuring out like, oh, there's like another culture over here on this island doing one thing, and then there's another culture over here. And it really felt like I feel like this world is lived in and has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. I also like the way the game is segmented. There's sort of 3 parts to the game where in the beginning you're sort of figuring out, oh, I'm the hero of time and I'm a kid. And then the third part is, you know, the fetch quest where you collect the things and awaken the Temple of Time or wherever the king is. And then there's the latter half where like the poop has hit the fan and it's sort of this sense of urgency of, you know, I have to save Zelda and I have to save the world. And I really like the way that it's this sort of slow, dramatic build-up, and then it gives you all these things to explore in the meantime. It just felt big and amazing.
I really enjoyed Wind Waker, but because I hadn't played any of the older ones, I kept hearing from people that like it's not super popular in like Zelda circles, and I always wondered, was I missing something? Like, what was it about? Did you enjoy Wind Waker, or like?
I definitely enjoyed it. I think originally the bigger complaint was the fetch quest at the end that you were talking about, the Triforce fetch quest. That's a big pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Just the repetition involved, right?
Yeah, and even some of the sailing, for all its great qualities, was also a bit boring at times.
I think the biggest backlash against Wind Waker was for that art style. People
Yeah.
were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's like a
That's true.
cartoony, kiddie Zelda." After and so after Ocarina of Time, after Majora's Mask, which seemed to sort of cue you up for something more like Twilight Princess, like that darker, like a more realistic
Yeah.
looking Zelda.
Nintendo had showed a demo,
Yeah.
like before the GameCube was
Yeah.
out, of a
Yeah.
very like realistic looking Zelda game.
And then this came
And
out.
so
and
people were hyped for that.
confused.
Yeah, I personally loved Wind Waker's art style, and it definitely ranks among my favorite. But I also really liked Twilight Princess.
Oh, really?
That's
Twilight
one
Princess
that
is good.
That's one that not a
good.
lot of people like. I mean, certainly GameSpot got a lot of crap for it. I think Jeff
Yeah.
gave it an 8.9.
Underrated.
I liked. I thought it was great because the character of Midna was like a companion character who was really interesting, and also the villain in Twilight Princess was like a legit kind of villain, not just like I'm Ganon, I'm the one who's always been the villain. I'm going to turn into a giant pig demon, and like it was similar to the villain in Skyward Sword in that they were a little weird. They were a little bit unknown, but had personality in a real interesting way.
Yeah.
Let's take a little moment before we talk about perhaps the best one to talk about. What are the games that I should stay away from? If I'm going into the back catalog of Zelda, is there anything that I should like stay the goddamn hell away from that I might think, oh, this looks interesting or neat?
There are the obvious candidates. I think we all know the CDI Zelda games.
Oh,
No,
yes.
No, those are fabulous. Please play those.
Oh my god.
What were they calling? Was
They're-
it 2 of them?
No, there's 3. They're not fabulous. Give
Look
me a
at
break.
that.
They're bad.
They're horrible. They're not fun. There's nothing redeeming other than the fact that they're utter shit.
They're bad and they're wonderful because they're horrible.
Watch
look at this.
Don't play the game. Just watch these clips.
You can find them on YouTube. Someone like cut them into a compilation.
Just
Yeah.
do that. Save your. Yeah.
It's just amazingly bad.
What does the gameplay like?
There's some like really bad platforming.
Oh,
Here you
shit.
go.
Oh yeah, no, it's terrible.
I love this like French version of this we have.
This looks
the
like an
gameplay of.
episode of Nick Arcade. Like that's what it looks like.
Yo,
With, like,
hit
the
that.
wizard in the middle.
Hit that wizard.
Where would you even? Could you even play this? I guess you would emulate it.
Yeah,
you
you
have
can
to-
burn CDI games.
You
There's
play
no
it
copy
on
protection.
your CDI that you still own, Chris.
Oh god, I did play it on a CDI thanks to Peter. He brought one in.
Nope.
Or some. We had one in the office, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We had one in the office. Peter set it up, and this is just it's awful. Like the hit detection was all over the place. Projectiles would just disappear. It's no good.
What a shame. It looks all right for a game that came out in 1993, right? Right?
No.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, like what? Do you
No.
think it looks pretty?
It's an
Kind
experience.
of?
What I actually found interesting about you talking about Wind Waker was that was a game that people were up in arms about graphics in terms of like we just did some B-roll for it there, 2015. It looks pretty great.
Yeah.
Those GameCube games, like that whole era,
Well, that
still
was
looks
the
pretty.
HD remaster. Let's be fair.
Oh yeah, okay,
Yeah, but
that's a good
that
point. 16
art
by 9 as
style
well.
holds up super well as opposed to the art style of Ocarina, which that does not hold up well. Like that game looks really pretty bad when
It's
you
pretty
go
good
back
on the
to it.
3DS though. Like
The,
that
th-
version
the
was
3D
great.
version is great. Like
Yeah.
they really livened it up in terms of the detail, the character. Like that's the version to play. Like don't
Yeah.
try to play the N64 version again.
Yeah.
Chris, what's your favorite, or what do you think is the best of all the Zelda games? If I could only play one, what would
If
it
you
be?
could only play one,
Because I'm a jerk. I've got
I
minutes to live. No, I've got like 80 hours left to live. I can
feel
only
like
play one Zelda
If
game.
you could only play one, you should get your 3DS and play A Link Between Worlds.
Yeah.
Because that not only is a phenomenal game in and of its own right, but it has these some real clever mechanics in it, but it also harks back to what many consider to be the best Zelda game, A Link to the Past,
Yeah.
which was the
Yeah.
Super Nintendo Zelda, which I never got proper chance to play, and still haven't sought it out, much to my great personal shame. But that one, this sort of evokes that in its style and in the way that its world is built, but makes some really neat sort of innovations in terms of the openness of the world and the way you move between the two worlds.
Excellent. And of course, GameSpot's Game of the Year for 2013 it was as well.
Oh, hell yeah.
Alexa, what do you think? What is the one that I should play if there was only one to play?
Only one.
Yeah.
I would have to say Link to the Past, actually. It's just like, it makes you feel smart. Like Chris was saying about finding that fifth bush and the whatever. It makes you feel smart. I think it's a very well put together puzzle game. It's fun. And also there's just enough there, but just enough not there that you can sort of really use your imagination and like dig into it. And I kind of like that it does a lot with only very little visually.
Excellent. Peter, we're going to get a hat trick for A Link to the Past, or are you going to step out?
A Link to the Past, but for
right.
different reasons. I think the way that game sets up the entire story with, Link is sort of in this little shack with his uncle. The uncle has to go to the castle because something's afoot, and then Link is kind of concerned, so he follows suit, finds his dying uncle. The uncle passes on the sword. Like, you kind of just infiltrate this castle. And then suddenly, like, you're sort of responsible for, yes, saving the princess, the damsel in distress, but you sort of get this quest, like, just kind of given to you. And you sort of start off like the other Zelda games, right? Like, you beat a couple palaces, dungeons, whatever, you get some pendants. And then the game is like, oh, by the way, there are two worlds. I guess you missed that part. Yeah, no, there's not just one world, there's two. So that moment, especially for me, was when that game kind of just took off. Like, great start, great middle, and then the ending is a pretty dramatic boss battle that I thought was great as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's our consensus, I guess, for the best Zelda game, if you only have 80 hours left to live or something. If you have your own thoughts, which I'm sure you do, please put them in the comments below, and let's start that discussion right now. All right, that's our first segment done for today's episode of The Lobby. We'll be back in a minute to talk about zombie video games. But first, here's a trailer for the latest, I think it's DLC for Dark Souls 2.
No,
No?
it's
What
a
is
new
it?
version of the game. It's a remake.
New version of the game. Remake. Dark Souls 2.
Very few indeed have come even this far. and yet your journey is far from over.
By ones who would cause him fate herself. They are the ones who created me. But they failed. Fate would not be bested, and men were cursed once again. Beyond the bonfire lies the Forest of the Giants, where a great battle precipitated the kingdom's downfall. The far gate is the entrance to Hade's Tower of Flame. Inside the giant pit live the tiny beings that were once man's friends. Over the hill and past the forest is the king's castle, where a man peered straight into the essence of the soul.
Fire came to be, and with it, disparity. And the brighter the flame, the deeper the shadow.
Until the curse touches our flesh, we are bound by this yoke. As true as the dark that churns within men. What do you want, truly?
Dying Light, Resident Evil HD Remaster, Call of Duty Exo Zombies, H1Z1. Seems like we're 5 weeks into 2015 and already the zombies have invaded. Kevin Van Ord, Rob Handlery, Chris Waters.
Not a zombie among us. Don't
Nope,
worry. Yeah,
not yet.
Not yet.
We all got our Zombrex, isn't that right? Or equivalent, as every game seems to have.
Equivalent magical zombie deterrent
Yeah.
juice. Green
Good for
herbs.
another 6 hours. Zombies, video games. I think this conversation's been going on for years. I remember having this one back when Dead Rising and all that sort of stuff started kicking up again. But yeah, now more than ever, I feel like we're getting inundated with zombie games. Kevin, what is it about zombies that like we keep having them in games? Is it just like a super easy way of having things to shoot that aren't thousands of civilians?
Well, I think there's tons of reasons, and depends on who's developing it and what you want to do. But one of the things is that zombies can be pretty much anything you need them to be. And so whatever you're doing, you could like we talked about Dying Light, but you've got slow zombies and fast zombies, and some of them don't climb, and some of them do climb. Some of them are huge and have big hammers, and like it's just there's no set pat thing. There's no zombie behavior. We don't witness zombies in life, I don't think, right?
So I guess that's the funny thing. Is
they
that
can,
like,
but they can be what you want them to be.
yeah, they fill whatever sort of mechanism you
Yeah, as
require.
long as they're bipedal and human looking. I mean, that's the thing with zombies is they're a stand-in for people. Like, all right, like if we just had these games of just massacring tons. I mean, what you're gonna make an open world and everyone's gone crazy. What's the reason? That they're zombies. But you're not gonna make. You're not gonna like the alternative is Postal, and you are just like not everyone's not gone crazy. I'm gone crazy. I'm gonna do the crazy thing and just murder all these people. It's so fun. It's like these fantasies of violence and power that you live out by destroying human-looking things, but you're guilt-free because they're zombies.
It's kind of the only way of having a game set in a place that isn't a war zone. Like instead of it being like the enemy combatant, and even that, like in 2015's geopolitical landscape, is becoming so much more difficult than ever before to like validate.
What's
like,
a war zone?
What does a war like? Who is the baddie?
Yeah.
Like obviously there are people that we consider to be evil and bad and on the wrong side of whatever event is happening or war, but like that's muddied so much by the sort of, I don't know, but the fact that we have much more access to the truths of warfare, as it were, and especially after living the past 10 years doing it. But zombies are kind of like a really easy get out.
Yep.
It's like, don't worry about it.
There's even more to that too, though, because I think they're conducive to certain types of game ideas. So, like, if you look at something like Dead Island, Dead Rising type thing, you've got like weapon crafting systems, or you've got this whole idea where you can stick different parts together. But what are you going to use that kind of crap on? Like, if I have a hobby horse and I want to stick a shotgun onto it, like, what is my enemy in a game like that?
Yeah.
Like, and there's also the issue.
Taliban. Like, I get what you mean.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but there's also the issue, I think, and I don't think zombies are even necessarily have to be. I mean, they're enemies, but there's also the idea that and a lot of times you're not even supposed to engage with them, like in Dying Light again, and Dead Rising and Dead Island. For the most part, you just get around them, right? Like, it's not like a Resident Evil zombie. It's a different kind of thing.
Yeah.
The horde is your obstacle, but your main goal is to avoid being, engaging. Unless you're.
Yeah, and Left 4 Dead, you don't play to kill all zombies. If
Yeah.
you do, you're going to fail. So I think it's interesting because, we talked about ways that zombies sort of allow these new environments to be explored and these new game mechanics, but then you have something like Call of Duty zombies, and you have that in Advanced Warfare where you're already in a battleground. Like, it's already set up to have, just tons of people you can shoot, and that's in the game. Why do you put zombies there? Rob, you've been playing a bunch of zombies recently. Like, what do zombies bring to this mode that, like, I don't know, just a horde mode would not?
Right. Well, it's interesting, too, because I have two different kind of, like, viewpoints. One being, like, I would like my zombies to have a reason for being a zombie, right? This Call of Duty
there's a
XO,
virus.
it's just a virus, but you don't need any explanation because you're just there to just hose them down endlessly. There's only a little bit of like narration you can throw in to something like this, where it's just wave after wave after wave.
What about something like Dying Light?
So Dying Light is, I wish I would have liked to have seen a little better, like, maybe diving into like, why is there a bomber zombie who explodes? And they barely tap on that. But if I were to, like, my favorite, for instance, is like a game that is like really unique, like Last of Us. Like, yes, you could say they're not zombies, but they at least went out of their way and like developed something really unique, and they took, like an actual fungus that does that to insects.
You kind of developed it out into something more.
To something different, yeah.
So isn't that the weird thing? It's like you mentioned The Last of Us, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got this ridiculous exo zombies thing. We've had Resident Evil, which is like a horror game, which you couldn't really say about maybe The Last of Us slightly, and then you've got Dying Light, which is just like an open world exploration game, which again just so happens to have zombies. Like, they seem to fit into every single like genre.
Yeah.
Like, where's our zombie soccer game?
Do you know what's interesting? Like, when I start thinking about you going through those games too, I think about how many of them. I mean, they're all zombie games, but how many of them are actually about zombies? Like, I play The Walking Dead, and sure, there's zombies everywhere, but that's not. They're not. Walking Dead's not really about zombies.
Yeah.
It's about fight for survival. It's about the human connection and the kinds of connections that you gain in a world like that, and how do you survive and how do you thrive? Or I look at even Resident Evil. I mean, the zombies are there, but I don't know. Like, the threat always seems to be something different than just a zombie alone.
And eventually it ends up being hunters as well, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's more about, to me, like I look at Resident Evil 4, and I don't even think it's really about the zombies so much as I think it's just about staying safe and secure, and it's not really about killing zombies.
And eventually they've stepped away from that, like 5 and 6, or might as well.
Well, they're
5
just
mightn't as
pure
well.
zombie games at that point.
But they mightn't as well be zombies. They're like different types of zombies. They've stepped so far away from what zombies are that they mightn't as well have been zombies by that stage. It's really weird. Like, I feel like the only game that falls into this is actually about zombies is something like maybe Dead Rising, which does that thing where zombies are the kind of like a metaphor for, in that game, going back to like old zombie movies of old, like, capitalism and like fervent consumption.
But even then, it's not about
like
zombies, you know what I mean? Like, it's not about the zombies you see on the screen, it's about our zombification. And even beyond that, like the original Dead Rising, it's all about using time. And in that case, the zombie horde is an obstacle to you completing things you need to get done quickly. They're not there necessarily for you to kill. I mean, they're there to kill. But, I don't know. I think of something as like House of the Dead or something like that maybe is more pure just zombie game that's actually about zombies.
Typing of the Dead, the most zombie game ever created.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a game, is a game really ever about zombies? Like, is a platformer really ever about spike pits?
Yeah.
Zombies are, you touched on it before, Kevin, they're, in terms of a game mechanic, in terms of building a world, they're so versatile as just a way to make a place threatening. And a way to control that level of threat and have just such a wide degree of freedom. I mean, the zombies in Walking Dead are very low key. But then you have the zombies in Left 4 Dead that barf on you and explode and have giant tongues. And zombies in Dying Light get pretty wild. In terms of the stuff that they do. So, what's the difference? I guess what's the difference between zombies as just sort of a threat part of the environment, and when you're fighting aliens, fighting the Covenant in Halo, or fighting the Chimera in Resistance? What's the difference between zombies as enemy and just entirely specially designed alien or other kind of enemy?
Yeah, because one of the things I remember, Rob, you did your it's a 12 different types of zombies that are in Dying Light. So I could even see it in the comments for this episode of The Lobby when it went up. It's just people saying zombies suck, zombies are played out. And I remember times feeling that. This month, you've played 3 zombie games. You played H1Z1, which is basically a copy of a game that's been out for a couple of years anyway.
You even went back and played DayZ, which is what you're talking about too. Yeah.
The Call of Duty Exo Zombies, which is another game that we've had zombies in Call of Duty before.
Sure.
And then of course Dying Light as well. So you've been pretty much in the trenches on zombies. Are you sick of them? Today after 2 weeks of it?
Yeah, I am. I am sick of them. I would like to say that I will never play a zombie game ever, but that's not the case. I'm definitely just tired of it. But hell no, is our zombies going anywhere? I mean, it's just a matter of bringing them into a new light, for me at least. I would like to see them, someone, like I said with Last of Us, that kind of blew me away. It was oh, that's really cool. They kind of went out of their way to explain a situation as opposed to just going for the cliche zombies. Here you go.
And between The Last of Us and The Walking Dead, as you were saying, Kevin, two of the most critically lauded and commercially successful games over the past couple of years. Do you see zombies going away anytime soon? Do you think that they're just so useful as a mechanism?
They're useful, and I think it's also, I think the alien thing actually brings up a good point too, because whether you're making aliens or zombies, you can create forms of behavior that you don't have to do in people, and you can make them very simple forms of behavior. This is the aggressive one. This is, sometimes you get the, something like, I don't know, the Covenant in Halo or something like that, which would be really smart and stuff like that. But for the most part, you program people, you want them to be human-like, and so we notice when they're behaving in ways that don't make sense. You make zombies, you can do whatever you want with them, and you're just this is what that one does.
So, some of the time, are they just get outs? Are we going to get to the stage where we're playing a game that isn't either a zombie or on the complete opposite scale, as you were saying, Chris, Postal, which is just so ridiculous? Will we ever have a game where certain moments in The Last of Us, actually, where you are pointing a gun at a human being and you are making a moral decision, and it's not just, oh, it's fine, they're undead or they're the bad guy?
Well, we already isn't No Russian kind of the real people equivalent of that in Modern Warfare 2?
If you had any player agency in that situation, maybe?
Can you, that's the thing. You can't do that with people unless you want to feel like a horrid human being. Well, I guess there are people that are making games like that too. I don't know, Hatred sounds like that kind of game, right?
Looks like a real piece of trash as well.
But
as someone who enjoyed Postal 2, Hatred looks like a real piece of shit.
Zombies and aliens are both easy because you can let the player have a power fantasy and just mow down as many as they want without any kind of moral or social repercussion for enjoying that.
Well, Kevin, what was that game that came out maybe 2 years ago, and it was a downloadable Xbox Live Arcade title where you're in the ruins of old Chicago, and it's very washed out, and you're kind of escorting.
That game.
Yeah,
I'm Alive.
I'm Alive. So in that game, you do. Resources are very scant, but you have a gun and you come across groups of bandits, and there's a mechanic in there of you pull out the gun to threaten them, and then their behavior changes, and then but like in some situations, they're going to attack you, or maybe they're going to go on their way, and so that game kind of took made violent encounters like the peak, not sort of the norm that you'd operate on. It would be like, whoa, like even pulling out a gun is super dramatic, and so I think we do have games that sort of get at what you're thinking, like that will make the trigger pull that meaningful, but that's really hard to do because a trigger pull is like when you're pointing it at someone, like. That's like the unthinkable to most of us, and to confront that in a game form, I mean, that has to be so intense and so constructed, like as a game mechanic. I mean,
technology's changed it too. I think, like I look at something like Resident Evil 1, and it's like it's not like there was a horde that you were facing. You're facing 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. The most you get is like, a couple dogs come through the thing. But then as technology gets bigger, it's like we want to have 7 trillion moving things
like
to
Dead
shoot
Rising
on
1 and
at
2.
one time. Yeah, totally.
Wow, look at the horde.
And that changed the way we think of zombies, and as well the way just pop culture in general. Like now, when I think zombies, I think of something like The Walking Dead, and now it's no longer about. We don't treat zombies quite the same way now. It's more about the human story that develops among survivors.
Right.
That's very much. To me, the current way we look at zombie stuff.
Absolutely. That's H1Z1. That's what it is. That's what DayZ. It's your experiences with other players. No one even cares about zombies. They're nothing. It's who you're talking to, who can you trust, probably, and that's going to be mostly no one, right? You're exactly right. Survival instincts and stuff.
It's interesting. For as played out as zombies are, we actually got quite a lot to discuss there in terms of like how they affect different games and the way in which like the different genres they cross into as well. So it doesn't look like we're missing out on zombie games anytime soon. Let us know what you think about zombie games. Are they played out, or do you have any favorites that we didn't mention? Let us know in the comments below. All right. New Mortal Kombat characters getting announced all the time. Ed Boon's just like dollars at his favorite club. Just check out all these goddamn Mortal Kombat heroes. I don't know why everyone's freaking out. I've never been a big Ermac.
I just want them to announce Marshawn Lynch and Rob Gronkowski from that Conan sketch, which was marvelous.
I just want Cyrax and Sector. Remember the robot dudes?
You want robot dudes.
I want a robot that shoots a net out of his chest. It's like the last day of development. What do we got left? I don't know. I got this yellow robot.
The net shot is tricky. It's not like he just pulls out a gun and shoots someone, which I'm pretty sure happens in.
That's also yes.
Yeah.
That would be not Jax. Who's the other guy? Who's the other cop?
You shouldn't be looking at me.
Sector has rockets.
He's like looking at me for answers.
The production line. One of the robots was made for like actual warfare, and the other one was for catching haddock, and it just got changed up. Anyway. Just check out the trailer for Ermac in Mortal Kombat.
How many souls do you harbor? We wield them out of thousands, yet you have no heart.
Fatality. Ermac wins. Flawless victory.
One of the biggest games of this half of 2015 is going through its beta. Its second beta, but its first beta of 2015. Aaron Sampson, Ryan Schubert, Battlefield experts here in the office are here to talk to us about Battlefield Hardline. First of all, you've been playing this beta. You guys play all of the Battlefield games here in the office. Aaron, what do you think about this beta in comparison to what came out after E3 last year?
It's a big improvement. Visceral sat down with their original beta, which was supposed to be an actual beta.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of very aggressive fan feedback, and they took that fan feedback and just really, really tightened all like the mechanics and the experience they've done a really good job in listening to their fan base.
Has anything changed, like, majorly in terms of the game modes available, the guns available, how stuff plays, or is it like the intricacies of the game modes themselves?
Yeah, so there was a huge change in heist mode, where what used to happen is people would run in, they'd grab the cash, and then they'd immediately go to the exit points and win. And that was it just was like over in an instant. So they basically made the exit points also random, like they rotate around the map, and you have to capture them.
Okay, cool.
Over time. Excuse me. So battles happen both in the bank and then at the capture points. It elongates the matches.
Ryan, you've been playing as well for a bit today.
Yeah, a little bit today. The heist feels a little bit chaotic, but I feel like that's also everybody still learning. You know, like it seems to have an interesting sort of balance of like an objective-based mode with more or less a team deathmatch, because you know there's players that are trying to move the cash to the escape point, but there's also just a constant firefight happening
all over the place.
Yeah, because like in the case, I don't know if it's going to be different on the other maps when they come out, but like in this case, the map is small enough that where the police spawn and where the criminals spawn, like they're not that far apart. You're going to be back in the firefight in a matter of moments.
Excellent. That was one thing
very
that
chaotic.
irked me a bit about the other beta was trying to get back into the sort of the big melee that seemed to be happening in one sort of area. Chris, yourself and Aaron worked on a really good video last week about the sort of the core mode that's in Battlefield Hardline. One of the problems maybe with 3 and 4 was that they didn't really have their sort of tent pole, this is the thing you want to be playing. Can you speak to that? Like, what did you like about Heist?
So actually, the mode that I wrote about was Hotwire.
Oh, yeah.
Heist seems like, it's cops versus criminals. It's going to be the bank robbery. It's going to be, some variant on that kind of thievery. It's going to be everyone tries to grab money faster than other people. But I think in terms of the Battlefield experience, Hotwire is going to be the one that people gravitate towards. It's going to be the one that creates those crazy moments, like way more often, that really sort of fuel people coming back to see what's going to happen next.
What happens in Hotwire?
Hotwire is basically Conquest with cars as the capture points. So they're mobile. And so instead of going to a position, like setting up, defending it, or assaulting a position that's a set place, you have to chase down a car. You have to hop in a car, and in order to gain capture points, you have to be driving it at like 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So you can't just park it behind a building. So there's no like static state in Hotwire. There's no like, I'm just going to sit on this capture point until the enemies come and then gun them down, because you have to be driving. And you could be trying to do your loop out on the side of the map, but you're going to, like, stuff is going to be happening. So I think for me, the thing that frustrated me about Conquest was so many of the players would get in there, capture a point, and then be like, woohoo, we got it, off to the next point, woo! And then like just give up that capture point, whatever. And so it was just this constant churn. And I think because Hotwire, those capture points are active, it seems to really have to be that answer for that nervous kind of frenetic pace.
One of the things I remember you saying before, Aaron, when the trailer for Hardline first came out, was that you were very critical of the like vehicle-to-vehicle ground combat that was in Battlefield 4. And you were saying, I wonder how they're going to be able to do this, because like some of the weapons, for instance, wouldn't really work if they tried to do this in Hardline. How do you think they've sort of managed to nail that mode?
They're still fine-tuning the balance, but one of the major changes they did was take the RPG away from the engineer class.
Right.
Or the mechanic in this case, because it would one-shot light vehicles, and that would basically shut down car chases. And car chases are the most fun thing to do, so you don't want to do that. I'm running into some things in the beta that probably have to tweak, like, players are getting good with putting explosives on the road and like trip mines one-shotting cars and things like that. So like they may need to even take it a little bit further, but they did a really good job by taking away the weapon. LMGs also. They took that away and made a battle pickup. Just things that would immediately shut down car chases.
Those things are now, they're battle pickups. So you can find them in the map and pick them up. Anybody can, and there's certain spots where they spawn. So
they're marked on the battlefield.
Yeah, they're marked
on the mini map.
Yeah, you can see them on the mini map. So it almost becomes like, to me, it kind of echoes that early Halo thing where it's like control the power weapons spawn. Because if you know you have reliable access to the RPG, then all of a sudden that helicopter that's coming in isn't like quite as much of a, oh my god, they're in a helicopter, we need to figure this out, oh my god. It's like, no, I got this.
That's great, the rocket launcher spawned. It's like the red health or something.
Well, and that plays a little bit to the game mode that you and I both loved from Battlefield 3, the Aftermath expansion, which was Scavenger, and it only appeared in that one map pack. And that was like sort of that classic style of you started the match with like a hand grenade and a handgun and a knife, and then you had to find other weapons throughout the map, and they would just be random pickups of rifles, shotguns, and whatever.
You guys have played like hundreds of hours of all those games, and you seem to have like a real sort of intricate knowledge of them as well. Your criticisms of some aspects of 3, and especially 4, have been like echoed around this office for the past year at least. Speak to sort of what you think the problems are with 4, with Frostbite, and how you think Visceral have got a kind of a job on their hands.
So I think Visceral's doing the best job that they can do with Frostbite. There was some really interesting things, like, so DICE worked on Battlefield 4, trying to make it work, well for a year, and it got to the point where it was almost awkward because normally I like it when devs support games, but like literally 9 or 10 months in, they were just fixing like movement mechanics and like fixing crashes for entering vehicles and using repair torches.
Yeah.
So like the Visceral engineers took a look at Battlefield 4 and they fixed some of the stuff that they told me wasn't too hard to fix. Like
really, just when they got hands on it.
Just when they got hands on it. Like one of them, a big one was a sound through floors bug where you couldn't tell by listening where somebody was in relation to you.
Yeah.
I talked to one of the Visceral devs and they were like, "Oh yeah, that wasn't that hard. We just flipped some code and it was like we fixed it."
Wow.
Like it was actually built into Frostbite.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have the switch thrown. Is what that sounds like.
That's crazy.
But then they couldn't get rid of certain things. Like I don't really want to stare at a loading screen in between matches. I want to be kidding my character out. And apparently when they tried to do that, it's so hard-coded into Frostbite, it basically either drastically increased loading times or kind of broke the game.
Yeah.
So I think Visceral is being held back a little bit by Frostbite. I question at this stage whether Frostbite is keeping up with Battlefield. And for that matter, Battlefront, which is now supposed to be out by winter break.
Yeah, they've got quite a lot of stuff on their hands. They're obviously DICE are not working on this. They've offset it to the California studio, and they're off in Europe doing their own thing, presumably working on Battlefront. Do you still worry a little bit? Because Battlefield 4 was such a clusterfuck in terms of like the bugs that you said were there for a year onwards. Massive problems
and
with
not even
like
was,
launch.
like is.
Yeah,
like,
it
still to
is.
this day.
Have you gone back and played
Yeah,
recently?
I went and played over the weekend just to practice a little bit, and I was still encountering just bugs I couldn't wrap my mind around, like why they still existed. Like, people, when you get revived with the shock paddles, like sometimes when you get revived, the screen is just shaking and it doesn't stop shaking.
PTSD.
Yeah, and it's like,
oh man, I'm in the shit. I almost lost it.
How is this still a problem?
Yeah.
And like I brought up my grenade launcher at one point and the tube was missing. And it's like, what? This game is now like 15 months old.
Yeah.
And these are like simple bugs, but they're still there.
It's crazy when you think that Battlefield 3 was pretty fantastic. But they've been making like solid multiplayer games for years and years. Even Bad Company, which is often thought of, they're like single player foray because they've been doing Vietnam and 1942 and 2142 and 2 didn't have like single player stuff. But like Bad Company 2 is one of the best multiplayer shooters I played on Xbox 360.
I think it's the best that they've done.
Really,
with like the way that they had the like map and mode designs work so well together. Like the maps that were designed for Rush flowed so well in Rush, and the Conquest maps flowed like Conquest should. And then when they went over to 3, they did all this sort of purposing everything for the same, all the modes.
Yeah,
and it just
like homogenous maps.
Yeah, and it didn't play well. No map was actually good for every mode, or sometimes even a single mode.
And to be fair, they're split. I mean, DICE has always been trying to please two crowds. There's an older crowd that came in during Battlefield 2. They just like open maps, mostly hands-off game. Just give me the tools and let me go. If I don't meet somebody for 5 minutes, whatever. That's that's my deal. And then there's a whole generation of people who came in on console and played the Bad Company series, and they expect a much more tight, more focused experience. Rush sort of defined their idea of what Battlefield is, and Battlefield 4 to me, the reason that it failed is because it tried to please both of those crowds. And ended up with a very bland middle ground experience.
Yeah, there was maps that were big and open, but then had like big internal areas, like the close quarters map pack. I always found funny. It was like you guys are taking your unique selling point and then just saying, "Nah, fuck it, let's try and do Call of Duty for a couple of maps."
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of dire talk around Battlefield 4 from some guys who have played the game for dozens and dozens of hours. Like, I guess my question is, clearly there are bugs that persist to this day, and that you see them and they seem to be more and more baffling the longer that they are still there. But like taking a step back from and looking at Battlefield 4 with an eye towards Hardline, do you think that the core there should be carried over to Hardline, or like what significant shifts do you think will benefit Hardline that they're sort of planning as compared to Battlefield 4?
I would say that I think the more that Hardline can be unique, with like the heist and the hotwire modes, like the more it can actually separate itself from Battlefield as like a unique product, I think the better.
And isn't that just do something different? Like, don't give me, they're going to have Conquest, right? But don't make Conquest the thing. And don't get, I don't want to have jets. I don't want to be in the desert somewhere at a fueling station. Like, you mean like you just, so you want it to feel different, to feel not like the 3 to 4, because that was not a huge
I
change.
feel like the title is almost them trying to do that as well, to be like, yo, this isn't just 4+1. This is kind of a new experience.
Having a strong theme is really going to help a lot too. Battlefield 4 was honestly like generic soldier McDude in a field. Like, I couldn't tell you anything. Like, half the time when you looked at a faction, you didn't know who you were shooting at. Sometimes you couldn't even tell it was not your team. So, like, I see a dude with a mask, I know it's a robber.
Aaron's a nightmare on hardcore servers. It's terrible.
This wasn't so hard in Vietnam. It's like, oh, they're the dude with the punji sticks, and I'm the guy with the Apache.
Visceral's doing a really good job of sort of restoring player trust in the hit detection of the game, which is a big deal because multiplayer shooter fans are looking for an excuse to blame the game when they get killed. So by putting in more tracers, by putting a different hit marker for a body shot, a headshot, a vehicle shot, like, they're giving players all this feedback. You died because you got shot in the arm or you got shot in the leg. Like, players have all this feedback so that they don't blame the game. They're like, oh, this is why I clearly missed these shots. My bullets didn't just vanish into thin air. Here's where I got hit. So it's restoring that trust in sort of the hit detection of the engine and a lot of other feedback systems that they've improved on.
You touched on how it's important that Battlefield Hardline has its own kind of theme. It definitely does have a theme different to the previous 2 Battlefield games. But looking at 2014 and a lot of what happened in the headlines, a lot of rightful anger or distrust perhaps of the police in particular here in North America. Some of the trailers that were coming out for Hardline for that single-player campaign seem to be touching on something that I don't think that they're particularly tonally aware of.
So it's the inspiration for Hardline is the police procedural, right? The Law and Order, the CSI, whatever. Like, they want to have that kind of television production, and so their story mode.
CSI.
Huh?
CSI.
Yeah.
A fine CBS property, right? Is that us? Yeah. 2 Broke Girls.
Nailed it. So that's I feel like the multiplayer, side of Hardline is just too bonkers to be in any way compared to reality, right? But when you're talking about telling stories about cops who are corrupt and cops who do good work and cops who are, interacting with civilians in this way and cops who are interacting with maybe criminals this way, that's when you really get into hitting on what is a huge issue in America, given the events of last year, is what kind of force should be used. And of course, so much of video games is about that power fantasy, is about being able to use force in a way that, you would never get to in real life. So I think they really have their work cut out for them, making it, tapping into that, but at the same time, not portraying being a police officer as carte blanche to do this, or as I'm a wild card, and that's good.
Yeah, it's like the Dirty Harry taking the law into your own hands thing. And something, it really looks like they were trying to create, like you said, a police procedural, and then what happened in 2014, not just one instance, but the incredibly awful amount of instances of this that happened in 2014 that have been brought to light, they haven't been in previous years. I feel like they have, like, I wonder if they have had to backtrack somewhat on what they were doing in that game, because I really doubt that they were trying to go down that line. And it kind of pisses me off that they're even trying to do it, because Bad Company is by far the best single-player campaign they have ever done. Battlefield 3, I liked it just because it was like popcorn action movie nonsense, and it was kind of rad. Like, some of the bits were kind of cool. Like, I really, that Paris level was really great.
So boring.
That was
that
really
whole
good.
Thing is so rote. So
and as rote as it was, by the time 4 came along, I was like done with it. I was like, stop trying to be serious.
We all reach our tolerances at different points for that kind of stuff.
But like,
right?
I was done with serious story at 4, so I'm kind of thinking with
I didn't
with this
even.
one.
I never clicked campaign.
Really? In all the
4.
time?
I never could bring myself to do it. I just.
So we're talking all this about multiplayer, and it seems like we're all interested in hearing about the multiplayer. You don't care. You don't care. Do we have a hat trick on don't caring about campaigns in Battlefield?
Oh, no.
I mean, this campaign might be interesting just because it's a little more stealthy and there actually is a coherent story to it. Other than, again, like, generic McSoldier face.
And it does seem like it's adding a little bit more player choice to how you get through a scenario, a little bit more like Bad Company did. So that is refreshing.
But let's say I love it. You know, let's say I end up really liking the single player campaign. It's going to be, 8 hours out of 100 hours that I play this game? It's insignificant. It's hard for me to fathom how much money goes into single player budgets in Battlefield when they know that it's going to be like a tenth or less of a player's time. It might be like 2% of a player's time.
Or it might be most of that player's time, because a lot of people don't get into multiplayer shooters, and the whole Battlefield scene can be like intimidating, and it also has this a different kind of cultural significance, not just because of the cops and criminals things it's taken on, not just because of the current events in America, but also because it is it's imitating what is one of the most popular forms of pop art, the police procedural.
Hey, guess what? There's quite a lot of CSIs.
Yeah.
On CBS.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
I never watch it.
So does that mean we get cowboys and Indians on the next Battlefield?
Yes.
Is that what's going to be the next thing?
Cowboys and Indians. Red Dead Battlefield. Make it happen. Have hot collabos. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming on and talk about Battlefield Hardline. Of course, we'll have to wait just a couple of months to play it for ourselves, or you can get in on the beta right now on the Xbox One. I hear it doesn't look as good as it would on PC.
I'm not going to lie, there were some aliasing problems on Xbox One.
Aliasing problems. Exclusive to the Xbox One. Let us know what you think of Battlefield Hardline in all of its various ways.
March 17th.
Yeah, exactly. March 17th?
March 17th.
March 17th. But let us know.
St. Patrick's Day.
Right. Is it?
Yeah.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
You don't know
Let's
that?
kill some bad guys. Let us know what you think on the comments below. All right, gents. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Hell a bunch of mess about Hardline. What are you doing on GameSpot.com for the next couple of days, Chris?
Putting together some guides for Evolve.
Sweet.
Because that's coming out next week.
Oh
and
my God.
I don't want you all to play it like idiots.
Yeah, and you've been playing a hell of a bunch of Evolve.
I've been playing a lot of it.
We're playing a lot in the
Yeah,
office.
I'm looking over and watching Kevin play for his review and having to he's got to learn. He's got to figure out himself.
It's a really easy game to get wrong.
Yeah. Ryan, when you're not uploading every single video that GameSpot makes onto youtube.com/GameSpot, what video games are you going to be playing?
I don't know. I mean, this week it's just going to be this beta just to put it through its paces, and then I don't know what else.
Let's play some more
kind of
Battlefield
at a
4, see how
loss.
busted it is.
Yeah, continue the bust. No way. No, I'm done with Battlefield 4. I can't do it.
You're done. Aaron, what are you playing? What are you working on at the moment?
I'm going to try and not let all the Destiny alcoholics in this office talk me back into playing Destiny. That's what I'm going to do.
I think Josh, who directs this, who's pressing the buttons right now, there you go, was playing until about 5 minutes before the show went live. Such is the power of Destiny.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I haven't played it in like a month. I was on that train.
Yeah,
I'm getting heckled from back there. I felt I got burned by Crota. It was like, hey, guess what? You could buy better gear than you've been working for the past 6 weeks. Thanks, Crota.
Nice. Thanks to everyone for watching the lobby this week. As usual, we will be back on Tuesday next week, 2 p.m. Pacific, and of course available on GameSpot.com and YouTube. Thanks to Ryan Schubert over the course of the next week. But until then, have a great week playing video games, and we'll see you on the other side. Adios!